Welcome back to Two Keto Dudes. This is Carl Franklin from Connecticut in the United States. And in February of 2016, I put myself on a ketogenic diet to take control of my metabolism. In just 2.5 months, I managed to reverse all my markers of type 2 diabetes with diet alone. As of now, I'm 80 pounds lighter with no signs of diabetes or heart disease.
Hi, I'm Richard Morris in Canberra, Australia. I've been on a ketogenic diet since April 2014. When I started, I was very sick with complications from type 2 diabetes, and within 6 months of starting a ketogenic diet, all of my biomarkers of disease had disappeared. I've lost about 100 pounds. I've completely turned my health around.
And this show is a document of our experiences thriving for years in ketosis.
Yeah, and reversing our diabetes.
Yep. And hopefully that might help a few people who are curious about this kind of dietary hacking.
Yeah, we're not doctors. We don't want to give anyone any medical advice, but we are keen to share our own experiences. We're actually both software developers, so we're not afraid of a little technical detail, are we, Carl?
No way, no how.
Yeah, Carl never reads the manuals. We have done some research into our own deranged metabolisms and the science behind them, and we share some studies that we found in the show notes.
And you'll probably work out pretty quickly that we're both foodies.
Yep.
We love to cook and we love to eat. In every episode, we both share a keto recipe that cannot be ignored. So please don't even try. So let's start podcast number 125. Sitting Down with Carrie Brown, part 1 of 2.
Heard you say you're due for a little.
So, Richard, do we have any apologies or corrections from last week's show?
Yeah, that was 124, Catherine Cross on insulin and Dr. Joseph Kraft. The only thing I have to declare about that episode is I totally enjoyed our chat, despite losing my voice during the process of it. But look, you know the drill. If you hear anything that we got wrong, just let us know.
Absolutely. So let's revisit what a ketogenic diet is. Ketogenic diet is any diet that puts you in a state of nutritional ketosis where you're burning fat for your primary fuel source, and your liver makes all the glucose that you need for your brain, your eyes, and other organs and cells that need it. And in order to do that, the way that we did it is by eating 20 grams of carbohydrates or less every day. Less is better, of course.
Yeah, and carbohydrates are sugar and starch.
Right. You don't want to eat any sugar and starch, really, but get your carbohydrates from green leafy vegetables, maybe some nuts, that kind of thing. Protein is moderate on a ketogenic diet, and what we did is 1 to 1.5 grams of protein for every kilogram of lean body mass.
Yeah, to give you an idea what that is, my body weight is 100 kilograms. My lean mass is around 80 kilograms, and I eat roughly between 80 and 120 grams of protein a day. Yeah,
there you go. And all of our energy we get from fat. The fat on our plate or the fat in our bodies. That's it. That's what we did. That's what we do. That's what we do here on Two Keto Dudes. So, Richard, how was your week, sir?
Yeah, it's been pretty hectic. I've been preparing for traveling to Keto Fest. I'm going to be getting on a plane around 10 a.m. on Friday, Keto Fest Central Time. And I've got to do the time zone conversion. So Keto Fest Central Time around 10 a.m. on Friday, and I'm arriving on a train into New London around 10 p.m. on Sunday night for roughly 50, 60 hours of travel.
That's crazy.
I know. I expect to have to sleep for a day just to recover from it.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I can't wait. Keto Fest is right around the corner. This is crazy. They've been playing our ads on the radio, and David Wu's got a big sign outside Simply Pharmacy.
There's a billboard on the other side of the world with my face on it. It's the weirdest thing.
It's great.
So, the other thing I've done this week is I've been talking to secret conversations with a venue in Canberra for a potential keto event later this year. And I'm going to talk more about that at Keto Fest, but Yep.
We hinted at that in the last episode, and it looks like it's going to happen. Well, we hope anyway.
There will be truffles involved. That's the plan.
Good.
So how was your week, huh?
Well, it's been a little crazy here. Got our garage cleaned out, and we're putting together lawn furniture and crossing the T's and dotting the I's of Keto Fest. We have spectacular help this year from volunteers, and got a big shout out right here to Louise Reynolds and Andrew Skate for organizing all these volunteers. It's just absolutely awesome this year to be able to count on people to do the jobs that we were doing ourselves. last year.
Well, last year there was a reservoir of goodwill that we were able to rely on. So we had a lot of volunteers who helped us last year.
Yeah.
But this year we've got some planning up front. We know exactly how many volunteers we've got. We know exactly what kind of jobs we need. And people are all putting their hand up to help us out. So we're very grateful.
Excellent. So another thing that I've been doing is following a 42-hour fasting regimen.
Oh, yeah.
Which means that you eat every other day, one, in a 6-hour window. And I've been doing that for a week. And for me, I've always struggled with long fasts because I tend to overdo it when I start eating again. And it's hard to get back into it,
Yeah.
This is something that I can actually do. And I feel like I can sustain this for a long, long, long time. So I just wanted to let everybody know that that's what I'm doing lately.
That's outstanding. So hopefully in a couple of months you'll be able to report back on the results and
yes,
and let us know how, because it's one of these things, a result that you get just one day of doing it is just a one data point. But when you've got, an extended period of time and you can actually track and using rolling averages and everything, then you get to see a real benefit. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's been good for the week. It's a slow and steady weight loss. And of course, hunger is under control. And my meals are great and I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to eat pork belly every day. That's kind of a burden on everybody around me. So anyway, that's it. Let's give away some swag, Richard.
Yeah, let's do that. Every show we pick a lucky winner at random from the members of the 2 Keto Dudes fan club.
Yes, and today we're giving away a treasure trove of stuff from vendors we like, all of which you can find at fanclub.2keto.com.
So who's our winner this week?
Today's winner is John Gillenwater.
Congratulations, John.
Yeah!
Let's tell everybody what John has won.
Sure. Well, the first thing we're giving away is a 2 Keto Dudes coffee mug that says Keep Calm and Keto On.
Nice. And a signed copy of Lies My Doctor Told Me by Dr. Ken Berry.
And a bottle of Stevia Sweet barbecue sauce. And this was developed by a barbecue restaurant owner who plans to change the restaurant industry forever. The sauce is full-flavored and only 1 gram of sugar with 2 carbs per serving.
Yeah, we looked into the sauce, and it turns out that 1 gram of sugar comes from the Worcestershire sauce that they use. It's not a primary ingredient.
Yep.
So we spoke to the people who made the sauce, and they'd tried multiple alternative ingredients and weren't able to find an alternative that tasted just right. So they used the least amount of Worcestershire sauce that they could get to get the taste right. I don't myself generally need barbecue sauce on food, but certainly if I had a teenager complaining that they weren't able to use regular barbecue sauce, I would not hesitate because have you seen how much sugar is in regular barbecue sauce? It's like 60% sugar. So, a 1 litre bottle of, this is something Peter Bruckner told us, a 1 litre bottle of barbecue sauce has got like 600 grams of sugar. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So as we said before, there is room in the keto community for products like this.
Yeah.
Rayo's tomato sauce comes to mind. That's 3 grams of sugar per half cup. And if you're going to use a little of it for chicken parm or Carl's Head pizza, you just have to know how it affects you. I really like a little of this sauce when I get at Barbecue Jones. It's also going to be available at Keto Fest at the Pig Roast and at RD86 on Saturday night.
Nice.
So what else we got in the basket?
We've also got a cheese-making kit from Pamela Zorn.
Yes, that's right. So you can make your own mozzarella cheese with this, and we're putting one of these kits in every Keto Fest attendee bag, too.
Yeah, and Pamela's going to be showing people how to make cheese at Keto Fest. So
that's
there'll be cheese-making demonstrations, which will be awesome.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to wait to win some swag, you can always buy all sorts of it online at gear.2keto.com.
Right. And that brings us squarely to a segment we call
Mail! Mail! What you got, Carl?
This came from Todd Gamble, and this is on the forum at the Great Big Public Keto Before and After thread, which you can read at success.2keto.com. And Todd says he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes almost 2 years ago. I had to do something different after a new medication made me sick. So my wife and I started keto, and here are my labs before starting on this wondrous journey. So on August 15th, 2016, ironically his 54th birthday, my HbA1c was 7.1, my HDL was 34, and my triglycerides are 101.
Right.
Yeah.
So his triglycerides over HDL is roughly 3.
Right.
You know, you want to be under 2, right? And of course, your HbA1c, you want to get under 5.9 sort of thing.
So then he says 4 months later, he was getting close to being non-diabetic. He was off insulin and blood pressure medication, still taking metformin 1,000 milligrams twice a day. So after 8 months on keto, his A1C is 5.1, his HDL is 62, and his triglycerides are 51.
Wow. So his trigs over HDL are less than 1. Outstanding. Yeah. What a change he's made.
What a change. And after those labs, his medication dropped metformin to 500 milligrams twice a day, off insulin and blood pressure medication.
Nice.
And after 22 months on keto, his A1C is 5.2, his HDL is 54, triglycerides 42.
So he's able to keep it up. So that's outstanding. Well done. 22 months.
Yeah, he says, decided to keep taking metformin 500 milligrams twice a day for now. Just afraid to be off of it for 6 months as the insurance will only pay for labs every 6 months.
Yeah.
Metformin, however, is pretty kidney protective and it costs me nothing with insurance. He says,
it costs the insurance company very little too because it's like 4 cents a pill. So
right. He says, if you are new to keto, do not be worried about eating so much fat. My triglycerides have continued to decrease each time I have my labs drawn. You may have a slight bump at first as your cells release all that stored fat, but you will soon equalize and begin to see your triglycerides plummet. Well
That's
done.
That's because you're using them. Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
So I've got one here from Ashley on Facebook, and Ashley says, I've been going consistent keto for over a month now. I dropped 15 almost instantaneously, like in 2 weeks. That's 15 pounds. Yep. And since then, I bounced back and forth between 225 and 220. I went through intense keto flu, but I'm still testing for ketones. I'm getting large amounts, and I thought by now I would be adapted. What's possibly going on? Okay, so my response is really that you're probably mostly adapted after a month. Yeah. You're probably 95% of the way there. You will get better in smaller increments over the next 5 months. And Jeff Volek was able to see people 6 months after going keto still having minor improvements amongst his athletes. Anyway, the weight that Ashley lost at the beginning was most likely just an accounting change that happens when we switch from glucose burning to fat burning. And you see this sometimes referred to as water weight, but it's just that you're no longer storing about half a pound of glucose with roughly 3 pounds of water. As soon as you go on from glucose burning to fat burning, you get rid of that storage and you lose, 3 or 4 pounds easy.
Right.
So once you're fat adapted, you want to eat to satiety, which should happen earlier because you have more access to body fat when insulin is low. And on a ketogenic diet, insulin should be low. Most people lose, half a pound to a pound a week until they get to a new homeostasis. And it's sometimes called a plateau. And this is the point that your body settles on as its Goldilocks weight. Not too little body fat, not too much.
Yeah.
So what's causing that plateau could be a bunch of things. Maybe carbs are creeping into your diet. Maybe you're eating satiety and then eating a little more. Maybe your stress hormones are driving circulating glucose high. Maybe you're short on sleep. There's a lot of things that can affect how much body weight your body feels comfortable carrying.
Well, we also had said before that this equilibrium happens when the amount of body fat that you have is barely enough to fuel your body. Because the less amount of body fat you have, the less is available to burn every hour for fuel. And so you have to eat more fat. But if you eat as much protein as you do fat, now you may be driving up your insulin and that kind of thing.
A lot of people lose a lot of weight very quickly, but not everybody does. A diabetic who loses 100 pounds before they plateau, that's because when they were diabetic, they were so metabolically deranged from the constant bath of insulin that their bodies held on to 100 pounds too much energy. And that's why some people lose 100 pounds. Some people only lose 20 pounds before they hit the plateau. My advice is really keep calm and keto on. Your body will hopefully get comfortable and decide it doesn't need as much stored energy after all.
Yeah, and that's what we do. We keep calm, we keto on. All right, let's roll a previously recorded interview, part 1 of 2, that we did with Carrie Brown. This is where she talks about her experiences in battling mental health issues. I'm here at PWOP Studios with the one and only Carrie Brown from Keto Evangelist Kitchen podcast. And hi, Carrie, you're a neighbor now.
Hello, I am, and I'm very excited to be a neighbor.
So tell me a story about moving here.
Moving here. So I had never been to New England or Connecticut or anywhere over here, really. I'd been to New York on business a few times, but otherwise I'd spent 17 years on the West Coast in Seattle, and the lady who designs the covers for my cookbooks, she lives in New Fairfield, Connecticut, over on the west coast of Connecticut there.
Yep.
And she said to me, hey, why don't you come to Connecticut and eat turkey with us on Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
And I have no job. I was let go from my job last year.
Yeah.
And I have no family. So I'm like, why not? Because I had no restrictions.
No dogs?
I have cats, but
Okay.
but I have I had a wonderful house sitter who loved my cats almost as much as me.
Nice.
So I hopped on a plane and came to eat turkey. While I was here, I looked at house prices just randomly because the houses were all enormous and they all seemed to be on acres and acres of land. And I was just like you people must all be crazy rich to be able to buy these houses.
The funny thing is it's all relative because go to Mississippi if you want to see cheap.
Right?
Go to Georgia.
But for me, so I said to Rekha, my cover designer, I said, okay, you can not answer me if it's rude, but like, what is this house worth? And because she has this enormous house on 5 acres of land with a lake and all the things. And she said, and she gave me a number and I'm like, wait, aren't you missing a 1 off the front of that?
0 or something.
And she said, no. So I pulled out, my Mac and got on Zillow and I started looking at houses and I was like, I literally couldn't believe what I was looking at. So the next day I got in the car and with my laptop and I just drove around looking at the houses that were for sale on Zillow. And I couldn't get in because I didn't have a realtor, but I was just looking at them and peeking in the windows because a lot of them were empty.
Right.
And I was like, okay, this is madness. And I had a good idea of what my house in Seattle was worth. And so I did some math and thought about it for a couple of days. And I'm like, if I move to Connecticut, I can pay off my mortgage 24 years early and be debt-free just by moving away from the West Coast.
So I blame the turkey.
Right? It's all the turkey's fault.
Right.
And now I have a herd of wild turkeys of my own. So I flew back home at the end of November and put my house on the market. Actually, I waited till January because nobody buys houses in December.
Right.
Put my house on the market in mid-January. It sold in 3 days for $18,000 over list.
Wow.
Packed everything up, packed the kitties up. And then I drove across the top of America in the middle of winter to Connecticut. And having paid off my mortgage and didn't need a mortgage because of the ridiculousness of the house situation in Seattle.
Well, that's a great story. Usually it's I'm hearing it from the other perspective. Like, houses are too expensive in Connecticut. We're going to Florida or something like that, which a lot of my friends have done.
Yeah, no. So I was able, with the equity from the crazy house market in Seattle, right, I was able to pay off my mortgage and then buy my home here in Connecticut for cash, which means obviously that the pressure to generate revenue is just nowhere near what it was.
And she didn't go to Las Vegas, Richard.
Yeah, I know. I'm just thinking, I did the same thing when I left Las Vegas. We were like the last house sold before the property market halved. And so we just squirted out of Las Vegas like a pip out of an orange, and we went back to Australia, cashed up. And it was pure luck, that we just happened to leave at the time that we did, and we were able to find a nice place in Bateman's Bay, a fraction of the price, and own it outright. So it really does. If you have the kind of career where you can work anywhere in the world, it does behoove you to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and I was lucky because I don't have any of the constraints that normal people have. As I say, I lost my job, so I didn't have a job that was location specific, and I don't have family. So yes, there's people I love that are still in Seattle, but there's planes.
Yep.
Yes.
And we can fly and see each other. And I could fly back to Seattle once a month and still be like $2,700 up on what I would be if I was still in Seattle paying a mortgage. So
Well, welcome to Connecticut. It's great to have you as a neighbor.
Thank you.
I'm really interested in talking to you about your area of expertise or your experience. Yeah, and I'm sure that everybody wants to hear that story as well.
So I assume you're referring to my mental health status.
Yeah, it's important work.
So one of the reasons that after I was laid off, one of the reasons I didn't want to particularly pursue a regular day job was because I'm on a mission to help people who struggle with mental health issues. And the reason for that is that I was diagnosed. I've struggled with depression my entire life. I don't know anything different, or I didn't know anything different. I was born depressed, and that had just always been this dark cloud over my whole life. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand why I felt that way. I didn't understand why I behaved the way I did, and nor did anybody else. And to them, I was just a pain in the butt. I spent my entire childhood being told to get over it or snap out of it or to, just stop being a pain. And I knew there was something that wasn't right, but I didn't know what. So I've spent my whole life trying to figure out what in the world was wrong with me, why I thought the way I did, why I never found joy in anything. And it all came, and so over the years, I was put on various antidepressants. Some of them gave me a little bit of relief, most of them didn't. Some of them made me violent, some of them made me comatose, some of them put me into 24/7 panic attacks. I mean, it was just, and after a while, I just quit all the medications because it felt like the side effects were worse than just living with the depression. And so that's what I did for a long time. I just sucked it up. I put on a game face. I pretended that all was well with the world. But that was just my way of surviving without constantly having people tell me to suck it up or get over myself or, whatever other phrases that they use, because they don't understand what it's like to have depression. People are much better at understanding things like diabetes and broken legs, and they give all sorts of allowances for those diseases. But when it comes to mental health, we're really, really bad at, one, recognizing it, and two, accepting that it's something that people who suffer from it have no more control over than someone who has diabetes or a broken leg or, something else like that.
Actually, you might be surprised with diabetes. I mean, there's a distinction between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. As a type 2 diabetic, I often hear, you've got the type of diabetes that you do to yourself, don't you? It's not the poor juvenile diabetics with type 1 diabetes who are blameless, but, you overate, and you've done it to yourself. And in fact, somebody who's diabetic, type 2 diabetic and obese and has metabolic syndrome, indeed has exactly the same kind of problems. That they're unable to control this. Their body is veering in a direction that they're out of control in. So
right. They've been told they have no control, right?
Right.
No.
Yeah.
So most of my life went on. I was actually in a massive amount of emotional and psychological pain, but I had to hide it because there is still a huge stigma with mental health now, but back then, 20 years ago, it was just like you never talked about it. If you were in therapy, you didn't talk about that. Nobody talked about having a therapist. All the things you did to try and resolve it were not something that you ever talked about publicly. There was just no support or understanding for it. But it came to a head 5 years ago, in 2013, I had a mental break. I ended up in handcuffs, underarm guard, in the hospital after my...
I call that Saturday night in Da Nang. Sorry.
So, just an interesting aside that I have never been handcuffed until I moved to America, and since I've been in America, I've been handcuffed 3 times. I've never been arrested, but I've been in handcuffs 3 times, and every time was as a result of my mental health status, that things that I had no control over. Anyway, the last time I ended up in handcuffs, I was actually handcuffed to a gurney by 6 cops, 2 paramedics, and ended up in the ER under armed guard because I'd had a mental break. And that was the worst 9 hours of my life. And I was 3 seconds away from being committed because in Washington State, there is a law that says that, well, committing suicide is illegal, so you just can't do that. And also, they have the right to commit somebody who they believe is a danger to themselves or others.
Right.
And I was 3 seconds away from being committed. Now, that would have been 2 weeks.
What happened in those 3 seconds?
An Oscar-worthy performance by me when I realized. So I'd been in the hospital for 9 hours. I was in absolutely my brain. I mean, I thought I was losing my mind. And because I have no family, nobody knew I was there. I had no way of contacting any of my friends. I had no phone. Of course, they take your medications away, which is disastrous in some cases. And so I was just laying there alone, locked up for 9 hours, just trying to figure out what in the world was going on. This was as a result, my therapist called the police because he and I had a phone call, and I said, I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore. I've been struggling my whole life, and I just don't have the energy for it anymore. I can't do it. So that's why the police came to my house in the first place. Luckily for me, in King County, Washington, where I lived, there is an assessor that has to come to the hospital and assess you before you can be committed. And they told me so it became, I was being belligerent, and it became a involuntary situation, at which point all the laws are on the state's side, not the patient's side. But luckily for me, it took the assessor 5 hours to get to the hospital, probably because this was in the middle of the night when all this happened. And so in that 5 hours, there was a big enough part of my brain, the intellect part, realized what was going to happen if I couldn't persuade this assessor that I was not a harm to myself or anyone else.
Wow.
And so by the time she came 5 hours later, I had actually talked myself into being able to convince her that I would be okay. That was the only reason I got out of the hospital without being committed.
And something must have switched on into doing more research or something at that moment. Was that an aha moment, or did you just buy yourself some time?
It bought me some time. One of the things, they didn't commit me, but I was released from the hospital on the basis that I was required to get a psychiatrist. I'd been in psychotherapy for years because, I didn't know what else to do. I was required to get a psychiatric evaluation. And so 2 weeks after that, I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder. And thereafter followed this merry-go-round of psychiatrists and doctors and medications while they tried to figure out something to stabilize me so that I could function in the world and not kill myself. That took a while. The first thing they put me on, and I don't remember which it was, but the first thing they put me on, I was literally comatose for 2 weeks. So they tried something else, and they tried something else. And eventually they found something that stabilized me just enough so that I could function. And I'm a single girl, so, no one else was paying my bills or putting a roof over my head. So, it was kind of important that we got me to the point where I could at least, go to work and provide for myself. But 9 months after my mental break, despite being on medication, I became suicidal. And I was suicidal for 8 months straight. Every waking moment, there was this voice in my head trying to kill me.
Wow.
If I was awake, it was there going, it would be so easy. Just the pain will stop. Just do this or do that or whatever. It was maddening, and it was literally crazy making. So after 8 months, I got I just got fed up with it. And I realized I was going to see a psychiatrist every week for half an hour because that was what was required, and spending $300 every week for half an hour. And all that was happening was that I'm a deep thinker. So I would think all week, and then I'd go in and I'd say, hey, I've been thinking about this. What do you think about trying that? Or what do you think about doing this? And my psychiatrist would say, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And after a few weeks of this, I'm like, wait, what? Like,
you get the feeling he has no idea what he's doing, right? Yeah.
And I actually called him out. I said, psychiatrists don't actually know what you're doing, do you? And he said, no. He said, we don't. He said, you show up with symptoms, we label you and put you in a box with other people that have those similar symptoms. So that's why you're labeled bipolar 2. I mean, bipolar 2 is not a thing. That's just the label we give you because we try and categorize everybody to make it easier for us to try and help you. And then we look at the box and we say, okay, for a lot of people in this box, this drug has helped you. So we'll try you on that and see what happens.
Right.
And if that doesn't help, then we'll try you on something else, and then we'll try you on something else. And he agreed with me that psychiatry is just, they don't actually know what they're doing. It's just a lot of trial and error.
Is manic depression an older word for bipolar?
Yes.
It's the same thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you have peaks and valleys, right?
So now they've further categorized what was manic depression. There's lots of different versions. So there's bipolar 1 and 2, which are the main categories. Bipolar 1 is where you're more manic and less depressed.
Okay.
I'm very thankful that I have bipolar 2, which is less manic and more depressed. So
you're more thankful for that?
Oh my goodness. Because bipolar 1, I can't even imagine what it's like. For those are the people who you read about in the news. Those are the people who end up in jail or, wrapping their car around a tree or, end up with $50,000 in debt from one weekend shopping spree. The bipolar 1 people are those poor folks that are in mania a lot of the time. Mania that makes you do really crazy law-breaking things.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not that. I am bipolar 2, which is a lot more depression, and I don't get mania in the same way.
It's interesting when you say mania. I had a misconception about that. I thought about the high parts of bipolar being just feeling good. But
so
what
for
you're
me,
saying is it's like, you're kind of over the top.
So that's bipolar 1. But for me, bipolar 2, we don't get mania. We get what they call hypomania. And for me, hypomania, my hypermanic episodes were awesome. So because I became incredibly focused and incredibly productive. So I would write a cookbook in 5 weeks. I mean, so for me, my periods of hypomania were fantastic.
Productive, right.
Super. I loved the hypomania. It was
You
awesome.
weren't going to Vegas for the weekend and
No. So the bipolar
poker.
ones go to Vegas for the weekend and run up $50,000 of debt and have sex with everything that moves or sits still long enough and drive 90 in a 30 and just are outrageous. The things you read about on the news.
Okay.
So that's the difference between the two. And then there's rapid cycling bipolar, where you switch between the two very, very quickly. So they've recategorized it into more. It's not
buckets.
Just manic depressive now. But I came to the conclusion that nobody was thinking critically about this except me. I was the only one that was sitting there going, Why do I have bipolar?
Right.
Like,
what's causing this?
Right. What's causing it? Nobody was asking that. Nobody was trying to find out and fix the problem. They were all just trying to drug me to make my behavior acceptable to myself and others.
You may have had the best position with which to observe the syndrome because you're inside it. I mean, that might have given you an advantage position.
And you're right, Richard, but the problem is with mental health issues, we're all sitting there trying to explain ourselves, but everybody's already written us off as crazy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we just don't even get listened to because it's just like, well, you're crazy.
And do you find that people in charge, the professionals and whatever, don't think about causes because they don't think there's anything they can do about it? So
I think there's a general consensus of opinion that mental health issues are what they are. There's nothing you can do about it. But I just didn't accept that because I was like, something made me bipolar. I mean, it's not, so there's something. What was it?
Right.
Was it genetic? Was it environmental? Was there some crazy chemical that I was allergic to that was making me nuts? Was it food? Was it the fact that my father was manic depressive? I mean, like, why? What caused it? So at that point, I got mad and I fired everybody. All my doctors, the psychiatrists, literally everybody got fired.
Done that.
And I took myself off everything because I was like, well, I'm suicidal on the drugs, so I may as well be suicidal off them because at least then I'm not pumping my body full of more chemicals that are having side effects.
Right.
So then I started, and I thought, of all the variables, the thing that is least variable is genetics. So I started with DNA. I'm like, I want to find out if there's something on my DNA that I was born this way. And so I spit in a tube and sent my spit off to 23andMe, and I got my DNA file back. And I ran it through some online tools which just make it more readable. And I found out that there were lots of things, but the big thing I found out was that I have the MTHFR variant mutation. MTHFR mutation is something that the people who know about these things think that about a third of the population have this mutation. That doesn't mean that a third of the population are expressing it or are expressing it in the same way as it shows up for me. But if you do any research into MTHFR, you'll know that it is implicated into a horrifyingly huge list of diseases and symptoms. So there was that. I also discovered from my DNA that I have a genetic intolerance to gluten. I'm not celiac, but I do have a genetic intolerance to gluten. My naturopath tells me that in people like me, gluten actually attacks your brain.
Wow.
I also found out that my dopamine and serotonin pathways are broken genetically in about 40 places.
Whoa.
So, and I also have and this is very common with MTHFR, I am not able to detoxify like normal people.
Right.
So if you add all of those things up, it was absolutely no surprise that I've been depressed my whole life and that at some point my brain was going to go sideways somehow. It was going to manifest itself.
Right.
Now, I don't know what triggered the break 5 years ago, but it had been brewing my whole life.
Sure. And for those who don't understand genetics, from what I know, the genes themselves aren't the cause of something. They make you more susceptible to. Yeah, I mean, It's an observation that people who have these symptoms and problems all have these same genes switched on.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was a huge thing for me. And it like just knowing that probably it was mostly genetic changed everything. Because then I'm not crazy. Then I'm not a pain in the ass. Then I'm not, and this is not something I can control. Of course, once I got the knowledge from my DNA, then I could start to figure out what I needed to tweak to get out of my life or add to my life to kind of switch that gene off or at least quieten it down to actually stop the things happening rather than just putting a Band-Aid on the symptoms. So getting the DNA report was magical because it told me that it wasn't me.
It was an objective diagnostic that's showing you where the problems are lie.
Right. So, and at about the same time, because I'd fired everybody, so I got my DNA, and then I bumped into a doctor on Twitter, and we behind the scenes we started chatting because I had my DNA, and I asked him if he knew anything about DNA. He was right close to me. He was 11 miles from where I am, and he said he thought he could help me with my bipolar. And so I went to see him, and he put me on a ketogenic diet. He said, and the basis for doing that was the ketogenic diet was developed to help children with seizures and epilepsy.
Right.
Now, the antidepressant I was on at the time was lamotrigine, which is actually an anti-seizure medication. That was the one that had been working the best out of all of them. So he said to me, it made sense to him that if the ketogenic diet worked to help people with seizures, that it might help me because the medication that worked best for me was an anti-seizure medication.
Interesting.
So he put me on the ketogenic diet.
Had you heard of it before?
Yes, I'd heard of it. I had been mostly gluten-free, mostly sugar-free, very low carb for 3 years at that point.
Oh, okay. And had that helped?
It had helped overall, but it hadn't helped my brain, obviously, because I was in the hospital.
You still had the break, yeah.
Right. So it was, overall my health was better and I'd lost weight, but it hadn't resolved my bipolar.
Gotcha.
So I got this new doctor who put me on the ketogenic diet. That was 3 years ago. So in mid-July 2015, that happened. Then 6 weeks later, I had an appointment with a naturopath. So that was September 2015. And I took my DNA. So I already knew about the MTHFR and I knew about all the genetic stuff, but I took that and I had 1 billion blood tests done and 1 billion food sensitivity tests done because my body was in a complete meltdown. Like everything was haywire. And so I went to see this naturopath. I'd been on the ketogenic diet for 6 weeks. She put me on the methylated B vitamins, which are critical for anyone with MTHFR because we do not have the ability to methylate ourselves. So when you eat B vitamins, your body methylates them into a usable form. People with MTHFR, we can't do that. So I had a severe deficiency in B vitamins my whole life and hadn't known it.
So a normal blood test wouldn't show that you had a B vitamin deficiency?
Who measures for that?
Yeah.
It's not a normal thing that they do. Of course, when she sent me for all the blood tests, she asked for all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But she knew what she was looking for. But I don't think I've ever had a normal, regular blood draw where they've looked for vitamin and mineral levels in your blood.
I'm lucky. When I went to Ken Berry, he took so many vials of blood and did all the tests for all the vitamins, just about everything.
Right. And so
that's a really important thing to do.
That's what the naturopath did. So, and it literally took them 3 days to get all the blood they needed from me. I was on a pincushion. I had 13 holes. I even had blood draws taken in my feet because my veins were like, stop! So we did all the things. We had all the data, the genetic data. And then I was sensitive. I had food sensitivities to virtually everything.
Wow.
So we took out all the foods I was sensitive to and then took out all the foods that were not ketogenic. And I was left with 9 things that I could eat.
Oh, dear.
And so I ate 9 things in rotation.
Do you remember what they were?
For 3 months.
Of course you do. What were they, out of curiosity?
So one of them, thankfully, was duck.
Nice.
Right?
Duck.
Yeah.
So what was it? Duck, pork, bison, some nuts, but I can't remember which ones. I actually don't remember the 9 things anymore. I've
Eggs
tried
were
to
on there?
erase. No eggs.
No eggs?
So eggs was. I'd eat an egg, and literally 2 hours later, all the skin on my feet would peel off.
Wow.
It was bizarre. So my body.
No. You got to get the non-foot peeling eggs. Those are in a special aisle in a special cooler.
When I said my body was in crisis, my body was in crisis.
Right.
Yeah, clearly.
And so I was ketogenic. I was eating 9 things, and if you have that many food sensitivities, you absolutely know you have leaky gut.
Yeah.
So my liver was just like, I'm not dealing with any of this. I'm not going to work. I'm not going to detox. I'm not going to, all this food. I don't want to deal with any of it. So it's all toxic.
It's like a cascade of chain reactions, isn't it?
It was. And so I rotated, and you have to rotate food, because if you eat it too often in a short space of time, then you become sensitive to it. So I had these 9 things on rotation for 3 months. I had the methylated B vitamins, I had adrenal support, I had a bunch of other I'm not vitamins, minerals,
therapies,
just supplements, and the ketogenic diet. It was 6 weeks after 12 weeks after I started keto, and it was keto for my brain, so it was heavy duty, like more fat keto,
right?
Than more protein keto. It was high fat. I started all the protocols with my naturopath 6 weeks after that. So 6 weeks with my naturopath, 12 weeks with my keto doctor. My keto doctor said, you can stop your antidepressants. And I was terrified, because I'd run out once before and nearly killed myself.
Wow.
12 hours later. So
not an exaggeration, I'm sure.
Not an exaggeration. And so I was terrified, and he said, you can go cold turkey. I'm confident that, and I'm like, no,
Wow.
no, I'm not doing that. So I took it down to half, and then took it down to half, and nothing happened. And I kept waiting for the shoe to drop, and I was prepared. I had all my friends on speed dial, and I was like, just in case, my brain just went sideways.
Wow.
But we after a week or 2, I came off my lamotrigine. Now that was 2.5 years ago.
Wow.
I have 0 medications for 2.5 years. I've had no pharmaceuticals, and I have had no symptoms of bipolar since.
That is amazing. That's just an amazing story, Carrie.
So yay me.
Let's just let that sink in for a minute, kids.
Yay me, I'm still alive.
So I'd like to read out for you the first paragraph from an article in Psychology Today by Dr. Georgia Eade, who's actually going to be speaking at Keto Fest on the subject, and she's going to be talking about this. But the article was called Ketogenic Diets for Psychiatric Disorders, a new 2017 review. And her opening paragraph is, if you have a brain, you need to know about ketogenic diets. The fact that these specially formulated low-carbohydrate diets have the power to stop seizures in their tracks is concrete evidence that food has a tremendous impact on brain chemistry and should inspire curiosity about how they work.
What a great opener.
Yeah, absolutely. She says, I first became interested in the ketogenic diets as a potential treatment for bipolar mood disorders, given the many similarities between epilepsy and bipolar disorder. And if I just briefly go down to how she suspects they work, she says, it remains unclear how ketogenic diets work to control seizures, let alone how they may improve psychiatric symptoms. On a fundamental level, we're not even sure whether it's the presence of ketones, the reduction in blood sugar, the reduction in insulin and other growth-promoting hormones, or the combination of all these 3 that are responsible for the brain-stabilizing effects of these diets. Theories abound and include altered neurotransmitter levels, changes in electrolyte gradients, lower intracellular sodium and calcium, reduction in markers of inflammation, and improved mitochondrial function. The general consensus is that brain functions more cleanly and more efficiently when a significant portion of its energy comes from ketones, calming overactive and overly reactive brain cells. So that's her hypothesis on the mechanism. But she'll be speaking at Keto Fest, and so we'll be able to talk to her about that.
I'm super excited to meet her. I've been following her for a couple of years, and we've exchanged a few emails, and
Excellent.
I just love her. I'm super, super excited to meet her at Keto Fest in a few weeks.
So let's talk about being foodies, all three of us, and especially you.
Yeah, we went a long time in this interview without talking about keto. So people who listen to us probably don't know who you are, but you're quite famous in the keto world. So tell us about that.
So several years ago, how many years ago? 6 years ago, I started writing recipes. Oh, no, I should back up. I'm a pastry chef by trade.
What?
So can you show me how to make a croissant that's ketogenic?
Yes.
Because I miss croissants.
So, yeah, me too. But let's not talk about croissants.
No.
The good thing about croissants is that, sorry, America, the best ones are in France. And so I don't have a problem staying away from them here because I know I'll be disappointed because I'm used to eating the ones in France.
Right.
So
Agreed.
that made it easier for me.
It's the same as bagels. Unless you've had a bagel in New York, you haven't really had a bagel.
Right.
Forget about it.
I must just throw in that I crave wheat, and so getting the confirmation in my genes that I have a genetic issue with gluten, that I have an intolerance to gluten genetically, stopped. I mean, I'm like, there is nothing on this earth that will make me. I mean, I don't have to control myself anymore when it comes to wheat. So that was awesome.
So you never crave it anymore?
I crave it, but I just mentally, I'm never, before when I craved it, sometimes I'd be like, oh, whatever, right? Oh, I'm just going to have that.
Right.
I've earned it. Yeah.
Having a clear diagnosis from my genetics saying, you cannot do this.
Can't process it.
Changed everything. Yeah. So that made the whole wheat thing much, much easier to deal with.
Interesting.
I mean, it's almost like that you won't go on a diet until your doctor tells you. When your doctor tells you, it's just like, okay, I'm going to do it now, right? It's just like having that third party tell you really can't do this.
But you've always been a foodie, and so you transferred your passion into keto food.
Right. It's just very funny to me that I'm a pastry chef by trade, and so I spent years. So I trained at the National Bakery School in London, which is part of the University of the South Bank. And I spent literally my life wallowing in flour and sugar. Right. I used to eat sugar paste for lunch.
Right.
Because,
I don't know what it is, but it sounds sweet.
Well, it's the fondant that they use to cover cakes in, like fondant.
Sugar.
Yeah, it's just sugar. I spent, my late teens, early 20s, mid 20s when I lived in Perth, Australia. I was a pastry chef. So for 10 years of my life, I literally lived on sugar.
Wow.
And I was 98 pounds soaking wet, and you don't notice the symptoms because there's something you've lived with your whole life. You just think it's normal. You just
and you're on a slow march towards a chronic disease, not something that's just going to happen one day.
Now I know what I know. It's like I don't even know how I'm alive. Like I abused my body so badly, completely not understanding or not knowing, but I abused it so badly. It's amazing that I survived that. But so that's where I came from. And then 6 years ago, I read Gary Taub's Why We Get Fat and What to Do About It, because I suddenly woke up and went, I'm not 98 pounds soaking wet anymore. And whose body is that? Because wait, where did that extra weight come from? And it seemed to be that no matter what I did, the weight didn't change. It didn't matter. I could do Slim Fast for 2 weeks and I wouldn't lose a pound. I mean, like, nothing helped.
Yeah.
And
I did Slim Fast for like a year, and that tipped me over the edge into pre-diabetes. But, yeah.
I fortunately loved real food too much to do Slim Fast for more than a day or two.
I still love real food, but my doctor told me to do Slim Fast.
My doctor told me to do Slim Fast because I went to him and I said I cannot lose weight. I've done this, and he said it's thermodynamics, calories in, calories out. I'm like, I've proved it isn't. He said, look, go away, drink Slim Fast for 2 weeks, 2 Slim Fast a day. That's it, 480 calories a day. You'll come back 10 pounds lighter, and you'll be back in control. I did exactly what he told me, and I exercised just the same. I did exactly what he told me. 2 weeks later, I hadn't lost a pound. And he
your
said,
metabolic rate had dropped.
Right, but he said, it's thermodynamics. It's calories in, calories out. I'm like, what? You're fired. And so, like, even my cat understands it cannot be calories in, calories out. I've just proved it. So I found in desperation, as a lot of, I can't speak for guys because I'm not one, but there's a lot of us women who are just like, we wake up one day and it's like, I don't know what the hell happened, but my body didn't look like that and now it does, and I don't know how it got here because I haven't done anything different, but all of a sudden I've got this extra weight.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in desperation, because I've always been tiny, I have a tiny frame, my parents were small boned, so any extra weight seems like mountains on a small frame. And I've never been very overweight. I mean, I don't know, maybe 20 pounds overweight. But that, for me, was so different, and it really, really bugged me. So I read Gary Taubes, and that was like the light bulb moment. And so I started doing... I got rid of the carbs, or the starchy, sugary carbs, immediately lost 10 pounds in like 3 days. Like my muffin top just melted, and I was like, what in the world? But that's where it stopped, because I was still eating a huge amount of fruit and vegetables, even though I wasn't eating any of what we typically call carbs.
Yeah, the white foods.
Right. I stopped all of that and started eating a lot more fat and more protein, but I was still eating a lot of veggies and non-starchy ones too, like any veggies.
Yeah.
But I started blogging. I started blogging recipes that were low carb. So that was 6 years ago. And then I moved into keto. And then by that point, I had quite a following, and people were asking me to produce cookbooks. Right. That was never my goal. This was never meant to be something that supported me, that was revenue generating. I was just doing it, one, because I loved it, and two, because I wanted to help people.
Yeah.
Because I'd suddenly found this way to lose weight, seemingly magically. So people asked me to write cookbooks, so I started writing, by then, keto cookbooks to help people. And now that's what I do. So Brian Williamson from the Keto Evangelist reached out to me 18, 20 months ago, and he'd found me on Twitter or somewhere and invited me to come on the Keto Evangelist podcast as a guest, and I did. And apparently people really liked my accent. I think that's the only reason. But people. So 2 weeks after that episode,
it's the 1 year in Australia that you spent. I can tell that's improved your accent out of sight.
My accent is a bit confused because I've lived in all the places.
It's adorable.
Yeah, it is.
Just say that right there.
A couple of weeks after that episode aired, where I was a guest, Brian reached out to me again and said, "Hey, like, people love you, and you have this great story, and you make the best keto ice cream anywhere. And do you want to collaborate?" He said, because I need a food person, and I'd love it to be you. What can we do together? So, and I was still in a full-time day job, and Carl will understand when I say Microsoft that's not just a full-time day job. That's
you have to drink the Kool-Aid.
Right, that's 60 hours a week. And yet, and so my mouth was going, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And my head was going, shut up. Like, when are you going to do this? And so he said, well, let's start a website. Let's start a recipe website. Let's do a food podcast in addition to mine. Let's do a food podcast about keto, and let's start a new Facebook group, and let's do all the things. And I'm like, yes. My brain's like, no, yes, no. Anyway, so apparently my big mouth won that war. And so
and it's hugely popular.
January 18 months ago, so a year and a half ago, we launched the Keto Evangelist Kitchen podcast, website, Facebook group, all the things.
Yeah.
And then I really ramped up the keto cookbooks because there was just such a demand for them. Yeah. I'm self-published. So far, I'm self-published. And so that's what I've been doing ever since. Now, then a year ago, Microsoft, bless their hearts, relieved me of my duties.
Well, and we should say not just you, a lot of people.
There was so on that particular day, me and 2,999 of my colleagues were relieved of our duties. We were apparently surplus to requirements, and that's. I would not be in Connecticut if that hadn't happened. That was the single best thing that could have happened to me since I got my DNA data.
And by the way, I need to tell everybody that I don't work for Microsoft. People are always asking me, hey, you work for Microsoft, right? No, I'm a software developer. They're a customer of mine, but I've never, ever been a blue badge. That's what they call employees.
I ran a software company that was a major partner of Microsoft, so I have a little bit of experience with their foibles, but yeah.
So I'm the crazy.
Yeah, I do.
We know the crazy, the political correctness, all of that stuff.
Right. So anyway, so them laying me off was actually, for 3 days, I was like, because as I say, I'm single, I have no other means of support. So for 3 days, I was like in this like dead panic, like my life is about to end.
Bet you've had a few marriage proposals in the last year and a half. She's blushing.
But so when that happened, it was actually the single best thing that could ever have happened to me.
It's funny how that works out that way.
After I got my DNA, because Microsoft, this is maybe TMI, but Microsoft essentially, because I'd been there a long time, so Microsoft essentially gave me 6 months PTO.
It's nice.
And said, but you don't need to come in. So I was working with Brian, and Brian has another partner, Danny Vega, who I call the Mountain of Meat because his body is ridiculous. He's the ketogenic athlete.
Yeah.
And so they said to me, you've got 6 months to see if you can make this work, because you've got a buffer of 6 months money now. You've got 6 months to see if you can make this work. With your cookbooks generating revenue, so that you don't have to go to a day job, so you can pour all of your passion and all of your time into helping people with mental health issues, which is where my real interest lies.
Sure.
I want other people to experience the absolutely life-changing things that I have since I've been keto and since I got my epigenetics done. So 3 months later, Brian and Danny and I launched what we call Keto Evangelist Unlimited, which is a membership site for people who really want, one, they want that community, and two, they want to really, really dial up the keto. So we did that. And then at the end of November, I realized that I could get rid of my mortgage and, reduce my outgoings to the minimum amount just by moving to Connecticut. So I did that, and now here I am.
And here you are. What a great story. We didn't even talk about recipes yet.
Right?
I mean, you're known for your ice cream. What's your second most famous recipe, you think?
Oh.
Is ice cream number one, first of all?
I have become known in our Facebook group. I am known the keto ice cream, and yeah, it does taste like, it acts like, it scoops like, premium Haagen-Dazs, Ben & Jerry's. That's what it's like.
Nice.
A lot of people have said that it's the best ice cream they've ever had, keto or not. So, and I tried very hard to formulate the recipes so that they would be super easy, because my goal is to make people realize that keto is more delicious than the sad American diet that they came from. That they're not restricted. That they're not restricted, that they can have all the things if they find a good recipe. But I want to make it as accessible to everybody. So I formulated the recipes so that they would be super, super easy for even people who are not cooks and don't want to go to Cordon Bleu to learn how to make egg custards. So I made the recipes super easy so that anyone could do them and be successful.
Well, we're going to have links to your recipes and might even do one of these or two of these on the show. So thank you for everything that you do. And especially the bipolar story is just awe-inspiring. And I know that you've touched a lot of people in your podcast and in your talks, and now we're hoping to bring that message to our audience as well.
The other thing that I'm famous for, I got sidetracked by ice cream. The most popular recipe on the blog is the sour cream and chive biscuits.
Ooh.
Which are just unbelievably popular.
Wow.
And there's a lot of people who say that they are the best bread item that they have found on keto. So whether that's it's true for them, whether that's I never believe in the whole best thing. Is like, if you haven't tried everyone in the whole world, then you can't ever use the word best. So I'm not a fan of the best.
If you qualify it for me, then you can say
right,
that. Yeah.
Right. So a lot of people say that for them, that's the best bread thing. So though ice cream and my sour cream and chive biscuits would be the two things that people seem to love me the most for.
Yeah,
Carrie Brown, thank you so much for sharing this with us.
You're very welcome. It's I'm honoured. It's taken me a long time to reach out for you because I'm really shy.
I never know.
It took me moving to Connecticut and 1,000 people in my Facebook group saying, "Hello, you live in Connecticut. You're half an hour from Carl. Why haven't you reached out to him? What is wrong with you?"
Well, how much fun.
Heard you say you're due for a little.
Wow, what a story. I just don't know what to say. It's so hard, and the stigma against people with mental illness is real, and we all have this bias. We think people can just snap out of it, but their brains are working against them.
It was such a fascinating conversation, we really had to split it into 2 episodes.
Yeah. Yep. Well, we'll be back next week with the rest of Carrie's story. And yes. I think you know where it's going. It's a happy ending. Yeah. Well, are you
Speaking of happy endings, let's eat some food.
let's make some recipes.
What you got, Carl?
This is something I'm doing for the VIP party at Keto Fest.
Nice.
This weekend. It's lobster bisque.
Yeah.
So this lobster bisque recipe is a little bit famous, and it's a little bit famous because Mr. Bobby Flay makes this.
Right.
However, he didn't come up with the recipe.
Okay.
A New Londoner came up with the recipe.
No. So it's a local recipe.
It's a local recipe. It has been made in my house by the guy whose recipe it is.
Right. And stolen by Bobby Flay.
Well, no. So here's the story.
Creatively.
Yeah, here's the story. Billy Bork owned the Bank Street Lobster House, which is right across from Daddy Jack's on Bank Street. Now it's called Fat Boys. Hasn't been the Bank Street Lobster House for a long time.
Okay.
Billy has been, a citizen in New London for years and years. He actually sold me an electric guitar, a Gibson Les Paul that I still use to this day, when I was 15 years old. And so he had this recipe, the Bank Street Lobster House, and he made it onto the Food Network. Bobby Flay actually came to New London and filmed an episode of The Best Of which was the name of the show. And they had Billy out on the lawn making lobster bisque with Bobby Flay. And it is still, to this day, Bobby Flay's definitive lobster bisque recipe.
Well, it's the best of, right?
Yeah. So the original recipe, we'll put a link to that. And I'll also put a link to the recipe on our blog, which has been ketofied. So the original recipe calls for onions and carrots and a cup and a half of tomato paste and cornstarch. What I did is I omitted the onions and carrots, and I took out a half a cup of the tomato paste because you don't need all that much. And I added some tarragon and replaced the cornstarch, a quarter cup of cornstarch, with 1 tablespoon of xanthan gum. So it takes 3.5 hours and makes about 20 servings.
Nice.
So tomato paste wise, that's about, a tablespoon or less than a tablespoon per serving.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Here's the ingredients. You need 4 1.5-pound lobsters. Lobsters.
Lobsters.
And, Maine lobsters if you can get them. You want a cup of tomato paste. You want a cup and a half of coarsely chopped celery, including the leaves.
Yep.
A sprig of thyme, 2 sprigs of tarragon, 3 sprigs of flat leaf parsley, plus a little extra for garnish, a half a teaspoon of saffron.
Saffron.
Very expensive ingredient.
Yeah, one of my chef buddies says of saffron, use it like you stole the stuff.
That's right. It's expensive. Admittedly, if you don't have saffron, it's not going to kill the recipe, so it just makes it a little nicer.
Yeah, but don't be weak in your dose of saffron.
Yeah.
Put it in, use it like you stole it.
All right. 6 cups of heavy cream, 1 cup of cream sherry, or I would actually use a dry sherry.
Yeah.
Because cream sherry is a little sweet. 2 tablespoons of freshly ground black pepper and 1 tablespoon of xanthan gum. So here's what you do. You fill a large stock pot with water and bring it to a boil. And there should be enough water to cover the lobsters completely when immersed. So you place the live lobsters in the boiling water head first to minimize splashing. And when the water reboils, you turn down the heat and simmer for 20 minutes. You don't want to overcook the lobsters. So you remove the lobsters from the pot using tongs. And if you can put them in an ice bath, that would be great because that stops the cooking process. Yeah. But you want to save all the water in the stock pot because that's where your stock is going to come from.
Yeah.
So you take 10 cups of stock, put it in a clean stock pot and put it on low heat. You clean the claws and the tails of the lobsters and take out the meat, the legs and the swimmerets and all that. And after the lobsters are clean, you put the shells back in the stock pot with the 10 cups of stock. You cut the bodies in quarters and place those in the stock pot, making sure to include all the roe and tamale. That's the guts, right?
Yeah, the brains.
That's the flavor.
Yeah.
So add the tomato paste and simmer that on low heat for 1.5 hours, stirring occasionally. So that's where you're reducing, right? You're taking stock and you're reducing it down.
Yeah, concentrating the flavor.
Yep. So be careful not to have the heat so high as it burns. Now you want to pour the entire contents of the pot through a sieve into a clean stock pot, and that should be about 8 cups of wonderful lobster stock.
Nice.
Now you place the celery, thyme, parsley, tarragon, and saffron in a large sauté pan. You add 4 cups of stock from the original pot and put on high heat for 30 minutes, stirring every 5 minutes. You add black pepper, turn down the heat, simmer for another 30 minutes, stirring every 5 minutes. And you press the entire contents of the sauté pan through the sieve into the stock pot of 8 cups of previously made stock. Now to finish it, you put it on medium heat, the pot. You add heavy cream slowly, using a whisk to blend it. Add the sherry, simmer it on low heat for 20 minutes, and the bisque will thicken slightly. Now here's the key with xanthan gum. You want to remove it from the heat for 10 minutes and let it cool. You sprinkle in the xanthan gum while whisking vigorously. No clumps. If it's too hot, it'll clump, and if you pour in too much at a time, it'll clump. You want to sprinkle it. Then you bring it back to a boil and immediately turn it down to low. You only want it to boil to get that xanthan gum thick. And then you simmer on low heat for another 20 minutes. You take all the cleaned lobster meat and add a cup of bisque. So for each serving, you take, a 20th of the lobster meat, put that in a bowl, add a cup of the bisque on top of that, then you garnish with the legs and swimmerets around the bowl if you want, and a parsley leaf in the center. And that's your ketoized Billy Bork Bobby Flay lobster bisque, which has its origins right here in New London, Connecticut.
Billy Bork, Bobby Flay, Carl Franklin lobster bisque. Right. I think we should give it its proper name.
Okay. All right. So what do you got?
Well, I'm going to actually use one of Carrie Brown's recipes because she's actually been known for her ice cream recipe. And this recipe is Carrie Brown's peanut butter ice cream.
Awesome.
So this recipe serves between 10 to 12 people, and it basically starts off with 2 cups of hemp milk. Now, you might find that difficult to find. You can probably use other nut milks, but for the authentic recipe, you want to try and get hemp milk.
Okay.
You have 3/4 of a cup of smooth, natural, unsweetened peanut butter.
Yeah.
Here's one tip. When you're in the store comparing peanut butters, look at the nutrient information and compare which one has the lowest carbohydrate per 100 grams. And if you don't get the column that says per 100 grams, you're going to have to do a little bit of math. But you want to make sure if all of the peanut butters have the same serving size, get the one with the lowest carbohydrates.
Yes.
So also in this recipe is going to be a sweetener. Now, Carrie uses xylitol, and she says accept no substitutes. She uses 6 1/4 ounces, or roughly 175 grams of xylitol. Now, xylitol is a natural sweetener that we get from hardwood bark. It's also found in grapes. One of the problems and one of the reasons why I personally don't have it in my house is because it's very poisonous to dogs. What it does is it causes them to overproduce insulin and go into a coma and die. So it's very dangerous for dogs.
Here's another thing about xylitol is that if you're not used to it, you've never had it before, or if you're not fat adapted, you can expect some serious gut distress. But as you get fat adapted, you can tolerate it more. I happen to think it's the best sweetener.
Right. It gives me a funny reaction, and maybe it's because I don't have it a lot because I have dogs in the house, but when we were in Breckenridge that time and you made chocolate mousse with it, I had a really funny reaction to it. One of the interesting things about xylitol is it's really good for your dental caries. It helps you remineralize the enamel on your teeth. So that's one useful thing. Anyway, so half a teaspoon of sea salt. And salt's really important for these kinds of recipes, especially with peanut butter. You want that salt because that improves the flavor. Half a cup of heavy cream, or roughly 4 fluid ounces. You want 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and you want half a teaspoon of guar gum. And again, the guar gum is just a thickener. It's a thickener that doesn't use gelling agents like starches.
And just for the record, xanthan gum is typically used in hot dishes. Guar gum is typically used in cold or frozen foods.
So you put the hemp milk, peanut butter, xylitol, sea salt, cream, and vanilla extract into a blender, and you basically blend it for 10 seconds. You want to get it well mixed. And then you turn the blender to slow speed or low speed. And while the blender is running, you add the guar gum by tapping it through the opening in the lid and blend it for 30 seconds and try it again. And you're basically getting it to a thicker consistency. You're making a custard. And so you're then going to pour this ice cream custard into a bowl or jar, and you're going to cover it and place it in the fridge for at least 8 hours, preferably overnight. And Carrie says, don't skip the chilling no matter what type of churner you have. Get it cold, because the whole point of an ice cream churner is to get it to turn to ice cream as quickly as you possibly can. So you want to bring its temperature down as much as you can without developing ice crystals, and then throw it in the churner. That's
what Alton Brown says about premium ice cream. He says you have to chill it to get those crystals and bubbles small. So that when you freeze it, it doesn't turn into, chalky stuff.
Icicles.
Icicles,
So take your custard that's chilled out of the fridge and give it a good stir to make sure it's completely mixed. Now, you want to freeze the custard in your churner according to your manufacturer's instructions. And it typically takes between 15 to 20 minutes to freeze fridge-cooled custard to a soft serve consistency. And once your ice cream is frozen to a soft serve consistency, quickly transfer it from the churning bowl into your pre-chilled container, cover it, place it in the freezer for at least 8 hours, preferably overnight, and you've got peanut butter ice cream. Now, I would actually add one point. I would use allulose instead of xylitol. This is something we used in Breckenridge, and that works quite well. So I would, if you have dogs and you don't feel comfortable having xylitol in the house, which is my situation, I would try allulose. That could be a viable alternative.
Did she say that hemp milk was substitutable for other things? Why hemp milk?
I'm not sure why she chose hemp milk, but she has a bank of testers who tell her she's basically doing A/B comparisons, and she says that this is the one that had the best response with the peanut butter ice cream. So
wow, that's awesome.
And she is the ice cream whisperer. She is known for her ice cream recipe. So that's the thing about recipes. You know, anyone can come up with a recipe that they can do, but nobody else can do. But Carrie Brown is very good at coming up with recipes that work for everybody, and she has an entire cookbook on ice cream recipes. So she is the keto ice cream whisperer.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's a show, I think. Let's get ready for Keto Fest. I'm gonna see you in a couple of days.
Yeah, very soon. Of course, if you have anything you want to tell us, something we said wrong, something you don't agree with, some more research you found to support or refute, anything that we've said, send it by email to dudes@2ketodudes.com or post it on our website.
And you can follow us on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Instagram at 2KetoDudes. And make sure to use the hashtag 2KetoDudes.
And of course, if you want to join the free ketogenic forum, it's forum.2keto.com. And you can have a look around the forum without needing to create an account by just starting with success.2keto.com.
And if useless swag is your fancy, you know, t-shirts, coffee mugs, and other junk with witty keto sayings on them, head over to gear.2keto.com.
And if you want a shot at getting some of that swag for free, join the 2 Keto Dudes fan club. You'll be eligible to win something in every show. Go to fanclub.2keto.com.
And if you feel like supporting our forums and all the podcasts we produce, think about making a monthly pledge on our Patreon page at patreon.2keto.com.
You can also see all of our podcasts and other videos on YouTube at youtube.2keto.com and check out Carl's cooking videos at carlsketokitchen.com.
And if you haven't already, go leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That's how new people get to know about what we do. 2 Keto Dudes is brought to you by 2 Keto LLC, who strives to support the low-carb community with podcasts and other publications. Richard, my friend, keep calm, keto on, and fast when you can.
Yeah, Carl, keep calm and keto on and fly to Keto Fest at least once a year.
Yes, sir. All right, we'll see you next time on 2 Keto Dudes.